Sierra Jennings tightened the strap on her worn-out laptop bag and stepped into the mirrored elevator, her heart pounding like she was walking into a lion's den instead of a venture capital firm on the 36th floor of a Manhattan high-rise. She had exactly one shot to pitch her sustainable skincare startup, and she wasn't going to let the nerves win. The elevator doors opened to sleek marble floors, a panoramic view of the city skyline, and a receptionist who looked like she belonged on the cover of Vogue. Sierra gave her name, adjusted her blazer thrifted but ironed, and waited. "Mr. Cross will see you now," the assistant said, standing. Sierra blinked. "Wait, Mr. Cross? As in Xavier Cross?" "Yes. He's filling in for one of our partners today." Her stomach dropped. Xavier Cross was a billionaire. Not just any billionaire, he owned half the tech companies in the city, and his face was plastered across every finance magazine for being ruthless, brilliant, and completely untouchable. Fantastic. She followed the assistant through glass doors into a sprawling office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a man standing at the far end, staring out at the city like he owned it. Because he probably did. He turned, and Sierra forgot how to breathe. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire apartment lease, and his dark eyes locked onto hers with a quiet intensity that made her brain glitch. "Miss Jennings." His voice was rich, low, and annoyingly unshakable. "Yes," she managed, stepping forward. "Thank you for seeing me. Sit." He didn't smile. He didn't offer a handshake. He just walked around his desk and took his seat. Well, this wasn't off to a warm start. Sierra sat, opened her laptop, and launched into her pitch before fear could swallow her whole. "I started Haven Skin because I couldn't find clean skincare that actually worked. Everything was either crazy expensive or full of chemicals. I've been formulating products for 2 years, and we've already sold out 5 small batch launches online." He didn't blink. "And now you want a loan? $100,000 to expand production and hire 2 employees," she said. "I could grow faster with more, but I don't want to overpromise. I'm realistic." He leaned back, studying her. She fought the urge to fidget. "You're passionate," he said finally. "But I don't fund passion. I fund results." "I have results," she replied, her voice sharp. "I've made $25,000 in sales over 5 months with 0 marketing budget. I do everything: formulating, packaging, shipping. I'm not here asking for charity. I'm asking for a partner who sees the potential." Something flickered across his face, and for a moment she thought maybe she'd cracked the armor. Then he stood. "Meeting adjourned?" But instead of walking her out, he walked to a small bar cart in the corner, poured himself a glass of water, and said, "How fast can you scale? If I have the funds, I can triple production in 6 weeks." He turned, glass in hand. "And what happens if I say no?" Sierra stood too. "Then I find someone who says yes." There was a silence, then finally a smile. Not a full one, but enough to make her heart flip. "You've got guts," he said. "I'll think about it." She nodded once. "Thank you." And she walked out of that office with her head high, even though her knees were shaking under her jeans. 2 days later, she got the call. "Mr. Cross has approved your request. But he has one condition," the assistant said. Sierra's breath hitched. "What is it?" "He wants to be involved. He doesn't do silent investments. You'll meet with him bi-weekly. You'll report directly to him. If the business grows, he'll consider a second round of investment." Report to him? Suddenly, her calm little startup life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. But she said yes. Because she wanted this more than anything. Their meetings started off cold. Professional. Xavier never wasted words. He asked direct, hard questions. He challenged her choices, made her justify every expense, every marketing decision, every formula tweak. But he also listened. And when she pushed back, and she always did, he didn't shut her down. He leaned in. "You're not afraid to argue with me?" he said one afternoon. as they sat across from each other at a sleek table in one of his company's conference rooms. "Maybe I just don't like being told what to do," she replied, arms crossed. His eyes lit with something other than challenge for the first time. Amusement, interest, and maybe something else. Something dangerous. A week later, after a particularly grueling product strategy session, he surprised her. "Cancel your evening." She blinked. "Why?" "We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "You hit your first milestone. 30,000 in revenue." Her jaw dropped. "How do you even know that?" "I have access to your books, remember?" He didn't wait for her answer. He just walked past her and said, "We're something nice." He took her to a rooftop restaurant she couldn't even pronounce. There were glass walls, live string music, chandeliers, and a private table with a view of the entire skyline. She felt like she'd stepped into another universe. "This is too much," she whispered. He poured her champagne. "Get used to it." The waiter brought out grilled sea bass and truffle risotto without them even ordering. Apparently, Xavier didn't do menus. "You always take your investments out to dinner like this?" she asked. His eyes met hers across the table. "No, never." Something sparked in her chest, but she looked away. She couldn't let herself fall for him. He was her investor, her mentor, and way, way out of her league. But when his hand brushed hers as he reached for his glass, she didn't pull away. And when he walked her to the car, opened the door for her, and stood a little too close, she could feel the shift. Something was changing, fast, and she didn't know how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. Sierra stepped into the penthouse suite of the Hudson Royale Hotel, her boots echoing on the polished wood floors. She hadn't expected their next meeting to be here. Xavier's assistant had simply told her the address and time. She thought they'd be reviewing marketing projections, not walking into what looked like the lobby of a private art gallery. "Is this your place?" she asked as Xavier crossed the room, phone still pressed to his ear. He ended the call without glancing at her. "No, I'm hosting an investor cocktail here tonight. I figured we'd meet beforehand." This quiet during setup. Sierra nodded slowly, taking in the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the abstract sculptures, the velvet-lined furniture that looked like it had never been touched. "You don't do anything halfway, do you?" "I don't see the point." He gestured to a low table near the window where 2 glasses of sparkling water had already been poured. She sat, still trying not to gape at the panoramic view of the city. "I reviewed your supplier contracts," he said, sitting across from her. "You're overpaying for packaging. By a lot. They've been with me since the beginning. They rushed my first order when no one else would even take my call." Xavier raised an eyebrow. "So loyalty trumps profit? I'm not firing someone who believed in me just to save a few dollars." His gaze didn't waver. "It's not a few dollars. It's over 20% of your cost base." Sierra leaned forward. "And replacing them could delay fulfillment by weeks. I'm not going to tank customer trust to chase a better rate." His expression didn't change, but his fingers tapped once on the armrest. "You ever think about selling?" She blinked. "Selling Haven? If someone offered you a few million today, would you take it?" "No. Even if it meant never having to work again? That's not why I started this." His eyes studied her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Then why did you?" "Because I wanted to create something that mattered. Something that didn't make people choose between health and beauty. And because I was tired of being told I couldn't." He didn't reply, but the silence felt weighted with more than just business. A woman with a clipboard stepped in. "Mr. Cross, the florist needs your final approval on the centerpiece layout." He stood. "Give me 5 minutes." Once she'd left, he turned back to Sierra. "Stay. Meet a few people. Some of the guests tonight run distribution networks. Could be useful contacts." "I wasn't exactly dressed for networking," she said, glancing down at her slacks and button-down neat, but nowhere near the level of the crystal-draped ballroom she could now glimpse through the double doors. "I'll send something up. I'm not letting you buy me clothes. You be doing me a favor." Half the people in that room are more likely to stay if they think I'm backing someone interesting. She narrowed her eyes. Interesting or presentable? His lips twitched, but he didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the hallway. Second door on the left. There's already a stylist waiting. You planned this. I plan everything. She hesitated, then rose. You're impossible. And yet, you're still here. 30 minutes later, she stepped into the event wearing a deep navy jumpsuit that hugged her frame in all the right places. The stylist had swept her hair into a soft twist and added a pair of silver earrings that caught the light with every step. She felt like she was walking into a dream and yet fully, undeniably herself. Xavier looked up mid-conversation with a man in a tuxedo and stilled. For a heartbeat, he didn't say a word. Then he turned back to the man and finished his sentence before gesturing for Sierra to come over. This is Sierra Jennings, he said, founder of Havenskin. Sierra extended her hand, launching into a confident spiel about her product line and vision. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. And when the conversation turned to distribution channels, she held her own. After the third introduction, she leaned toward Xavier. Do you do this often? What? Parade your investments around like show ponies? He looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Only the ones that deserve to be seen. The rest of the night blurred into a swirl of handshakes, champagne flutes, and hushed conversations. But when the crowd began to thin, Xavier pulled her aside and led her back to the penthouse suite. I didn't bring you here just for business, he said, pouring 2 more glasses of the sparkling water she hadn't touched earlier. Her heartbeat kicked up. Then what? He handed her the glass but didn't step away. I wanted to see if the version of you I saw in that pitch room was real. Or if it was just adrenaline. And I've never seen anyone handle this world so naturally without being born to it. She stared at him, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. I'm not trying to belong to your world, Xavier. I'm trying to build my own. Maybe, he said quietly, they're not so different. He reached for her hand but not to shake it. His fingers brushed hers, lingering. Not possessive. Not demanding. An invitation. And she didn't pull away. The knock came before either of them moved. His assistant's voice muffled through the door. Mr. Cross, your car is waiting. He stepped back slowly as if forcing himself to remember they weren't alone. I'll see you in the office Monday. She nodded, pulse still racing. But as she left the suite and walked toward the elevators, one thing became painfully clear: this wasn't just business anymore. Not for her. And judging by the way his eyes had lingered on her lips, not for him either. The first thing Sierra noticed when she stepped into Xavier's midtown office on Monday was the silence. Not the usual corporate quiet, the kind that buzzed beneath the surface with the hum of productivity, but a rare, heavy stillness. His assistant wasn't at her desk. The door to his office was ajar. She hesitated, then knocked once. Come in, came his voice, lower than usual. She entered cautiously. Xavier stood by the window, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, a phone in one hand, his other pressed against the glass. He didn't turn around. You're early, he said. You said 10. It's 9:58. I'm consistent like that. He finally looked at her, and something about his expression made her pause. His usual calm was there, but dimmed like the light behind his eyes wasn't fully switched on. You all right? She asked, stepping closer. He set the phone down on the windowsill. My father's estate is finally closing. There's paperwork. She didn't ask questions, just nodded and took the seat across from his desk. I brought the Q2 projections, she said, placing the folder in front of her. But if this is a bad time, no. Sit. I need the distraction. She watched him slide into the leather chair behind his desk. But his focus wasn't on the folder. He leaned back, eyes fixed on her. You didn't tell me what you thought of the event. Sierra raised an eyebrow. You mean the gala where I was dressed by a stranger and introduced to half the city's elite like a shiny new acquisition? You hated it then. I didn't say that. But you didn't enjoy it. I didn't expect to be used as leverage. I wasn't using you. You said people stay when they think you're backing someone interesting, she said. That sounds like strategy, not celebration. His jaw tightened slightly. You were the only interesting thing in that room. She blinked. That's not how you treat someone you respect. He stood abruptly. You think I don't respect you? I think you don't know what to do with me. He crossed the room, stopping just short of her chair. You're right. I don't. Sierra rose, heart thundering. Then maybe we should stick to business. Clearly that's safer for both of us. I tried that. His voice dropped. But the way you walked into that room the other night, like it didn't matter that everyone there had more money, more polish, you didn't flinch. You didn't shrink. Do you know how rare that is? Xavier, I've seen people crumble under less pressure. But you looked them in the eye. And you spoke like you belonged. Because I do. I might not have their money, but I have my work. My conviction. I don't need a dress or a rooftop to prove my worth. He stepped back, nodding once. Good. Then let's get back to work. But as he returned to his chair, the tension crackled between them like static waiting to ignite. Over the next few weeks, Sierra buried herself in the business. She negotiated new raw material vendors, secured a limited pop-up shop in Soho, and finalized the summer product line. Her days were long, packed with testing formulas, building out a new website, and training her first hire, a bright, detail-oriented former esthetician named Nia. She and Xavier kept their interactions strictly professional, though the undercurrent between them remained. One Thursday afternoon, she arrived at their scheduled meeting to find his assistant already packing up her things. He's in the back conference room, she said. But he might cancel. Something came up. Sierra knocked anyway and pushed open the door. Xavier sat at the head of the long table. Sleeves rolled down this time. Tie loosened. Laptop open but untouched. His jaw was clenched. His fingers curled tightly around a pen. Am I interrupting something? He looked up, startled. No. Come in. She sat across from him, but before she could open her laptop, he closed his. There's something I need to ask you. She hesitated. Okay. If you had the chance to grow faster, exponentially faster by taking on a corporate partner, would you? Sierra narrowed her eyes. Depends on the partner. Cavalier wants in. They're offering a $3 million valuation with a 70% buyout. She blinked. You're serious? They saw you at the gala. You impressed someone. They've been watching. Her hands tightened in her lap. And you? What do you think? I think they'll bury your brand in a year. Repackage it. Strip it of everything that makes it yours. Then why bring it up? Because they're offering you a way out. A way to be comfortable. You've been living out of your apartment, working 16-hour days, maxing out your own credit line. I'm giving you an option. I didn't ask for an option. I asked for a partner. Xavier stood again, pacing to the window. And I gave you that. But maybe I've blurred the lines. She rose, voice steady. You're not the only one. He turned. Then what are we doing? Sierra looked at him. Really looked at the man who had never once asked her to change, who challenged her precisely because he believed in her, who had given her a platform but never tried to speak over her voice. I don't know, she said quietly, but I'm not selling Haven. Not now. Not ever. He didn't move. Then we keep building. She nodded. Together. He stepped closer, but this time he didn't reach for her. His voice was soft. I won't offer again. Not unless you ask. I won't ask, she whispered, but something had shifted. Not just between them, but inside her. Because for the first time, she realized she wasn't just fighting to prove herself. She was fighting for him, too. And that terrified her more than any investor meeting ever could. Late spring rain tapped against the window pane of Sierra's new office, her new, actual office, one she didn't have to share with boxes or double as her living room. The exposed brick walls and tall windows were still bare, but the shelves were filled with her products, and Haven Skin's name was etched in clean silver lettering across the glass door. She stood in front of her desk, holding a sleek white envelope with a gold wax seal on the back. The note inside was short, handwritten, and infuriatingly vague. One last meeting. No assistance. No agenda. Come ready for answers. She checked the time. 10 minutes until she was supposed to meet him. By now, she should have known better than to expect anything ordinary from Xavier Cross. She changed into a pair of black slacks and a soft lavender blouse, simple but sharp, then grabbed her umbrella and headed to the building address at the bottom of the note. It wasn't a corporate high-rise or a hotel. It was a brownstone in Brooklyn, quiet and unassuming, completely unlike the world Xavier usually inhabited. She rang the bell. The door opened almost instantly. He stood there without a suit, without the weight of his empire slung over his shoulders. Just dark jeans, rolled sleeves, and an expression she couldn't decipher. "You found it," he said. "Hard to miss. You left me coordinates. Come in." The interior was warm, filled with rich wood, soft lighting, and the faint scent of cedar and orange peel. A fire crackled in the corner even though the rain hadn't brought much chill. "You live here?" Sierra asked, stepping inside. "No," he said. "It was my mother's place. She left it to me in her will. I haven't been back since the funeral." She turned slowly. "Why bring me here?" He held her gaze. "Because this is the only place I've ever felt something close to real. And you deserve more than boardrooms and rooftop dinners." She swallowed. "You said you had answers." "I do." He crossed to the mantel and picked up a small framed photo. 2 boys, one older, one younger. Their arms slung around each other's shoulders, both grinning. "That's me and my brother," he said. "Lucien. He died 3 years ago. Motorcycle accident in Corsica. I didn't know you had a brother. I don't talk about him publicly. He hated what our family became. Hated the money, the manipulation, the way we turned everything into a deal. We used to come here every winter. This house was the one place he didn't feel like the crosshair." Sierra stepped closer. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've been trying to find a way to say something without turning it into a contract or a condition. I've spent my entire life controlling outcomes. You're the first person I've met who makes me want to stop." She stared at him, every part of her fighting the instinct to armor up. "I don't need to be rescued," she said. "I know. And I'm not giving up my company to be someone's girlfriend. I'd never ask you to." She took a breath. "Then what are you asking?" "I'm asking you to let me in. Not as an investor. Not as a mentor. Just as me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Her heart skipped once. He opened it slowly, not a ring, but a silver key. Simple, elegant, familiar. "This opens the front door here," he said. "You don't have to live in it. You don't have to change anything. But it's yours. Not because I want to impress you. Not because I think you need it. Because I wanted to give you something that wasn't tied to business. Something that wasn't about leverage." She reached for the key, her fingers brushing his. "You're serious?" "I've never been more. You know this doesn't fix everything." "No. But it's not meant to. It's just a start." Then and only then did she let herself lean in. Her hand pressed flat against his chest, feeling the quiet thud of his heart beneath her palm. "You're not easy," she whispered. "Neither are you." And then he kissed her. Not like a man used to getting what he wanted. Like a man who'd waited too long to stop pretending he didn't want it. When she pulled back, she didn't need to say anything. The look in her eyes said it all. They left the brownstone together, walking into the rain without umbrellas, hand in hand. She didn't care that she was getting soaked, or that her blouse clung to her skin. Xavier pulled her under the awning of a closed shop and kissed her again, rain sliding down the planes of his face, his hands resting at her hips like they'd always belonged there. Weeks passed in a blur of expansion meetings, production launches, and late-night dinners where they didn't talk about projections or revenue. He never tried to take more control. She never asked him to. They didn't have to define it. It was theirs. One morning, she walked into her office to find a single envelope on her desk. Inside was a deed. He'd bought her the building. Not leased it. Not renovated it. Bought it. In her name. She called him immediately. "Xavier, I know what you're going to say." She paced the length of the office. "You said no more leverage." "This isn't leverage. It's belief. You're going to outgrow that space in a year. I wanted to make sure you had the room to expand when you're ready. No strings. No shares. Just a foundation. She sat heavily in her chair. You're impossible. And yet you're still here. She smiled, tilting her head toward the window where the Haven Skins sign gleamed in the morning sun. Because I want to be. That weekend they returned to the brownstone. Together. No agenda. No expectations. He cooked. She read to him from a new product brief she was writing. They argued over which candle scent to develop next. They kissed in the middle of a messy kitchen, flour dusting their clothes, her laughter echoing off the tile. And when she looked at him, she didn't see a billionaire anymore. She saw the man who had challenged her, supported her, and let her be exactly who she was. She saw home. He didn't propose. He didn't need to. Some love stories didn't start with rings or rooftop declarations. Some started with a loan application, a steel gaze across a glass desk, and two people brave enough to risk everything for what they believed in. And this one? This one had only just begun. Rain streaked the windows of the brownstone as Sierra curled up on the wide leather chair in the library, a mug of peppermint tea cradled between her palms. The fire crackled gently, casting golden light across the bookshelves. Xavier walked in quietly, his hair damp from a run and his sweatshirt clinging to his frame. He paused when he saw her, something soft flickering in his eyes. "You look like you belong here," he said, tugging off his watch and setting it on the side table. "You always say that when I'm somewhere peaceful. Maybe because I never saw peace as something I could share before." She set down her tea. "You can now." Xavier stepped behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. He leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. "I closed the Cavalier deal this morning. Not ours, their bid on another wellness brand." Sierra turned in the chair, her brow lifting. "You didn't tell me they were circling someone else." "They weren't. I redirected them." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not manipulating the market for me, are you?" "I'm protecting an ecosystem I believe in. That includes you." She studied him. "And what happens when they realize you're the reason they didn't get me?" He sat on the ottoman in front of her, resting his elbows on his knees. "They already know. I made it clear months ago that Haven was off limits. You never told me that. I didn't want to make your decisions for you. I just made sure you had the space to make them freely." Sierra's throat tightened. "I used to think people only did things like that when they wanted control. I used to think that too." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I don't want space anymore. Not from you." The words settled between them like a promise. Later that night, they sat on the floor of the kitchen with takeout containers open around them, Thai food still steaming, and a bottle of wine they hadn't touched because they kept forgetting it was there. Xavier leaned back against the cabinets, watching her laugh over a story Nia had told at work. "You're different here," he said, not teasing, just observing. "Different how?" "You let people in. You let yourself be known." She picked up a spring roll. "You think I'm guarded?" "I think you've had to be. But not with me. Not lately." She rested her head against his shoulder, the scent of lemongrass and coriander still lingering in the air. "You were patient when I didn't deserve it. You were brave when it terrified you." They ate in silence after that, the kind of silence that didn't need fixing. When the rain picked up again, Sierra leaned forward and kissed him, slow and certain. 3 months later, Haven Skin launched its first physical flagship store in Soho, a clean, minimalist space with living walls of greenery and product displays that doubled as art installations. Sierra stood just inside the entrance on opening day, wearing a simple white tailored dress, greeting customers, press, and partners with a grace that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she'd built. Xavier arrived late, dressed in dark slacks and an open-collared shirt. No security, no entourage, just him. He waited until she'd finished speaking with a buyer before stepping forward and handing her a single orchid, the same kind she'd used in her first product scent. "It's from the nursery in upstate you mentioned once," he said. "They remembered you." "You remembered that?" "Of course I did." She kissed his cheek, then leaned in close. "I love you." He didn't flinch. He didn't joke. He just pulled her into his arms and whispered, "Say that again. I love you." He kissed her in the middle of the store, in front of customers and cameras, and didn't care who saw. For once, his world wasn't hidden behind glass towers and gated estates. It was here, grounded in something real. That night, they returned to the brownstone, the store glowing behind them like a beacon. Xavier poured 2 glasses of red wine and led her to the back garden where he'd had a new patio built stone and cedar with string lights overhead and small trees lining the edges. In the center was a small round table and on it a single velvet box. Sierra froze. He picked it up and opened it without a speech, without theatrics. Inside was a delicate ring, platinum and sapphire, understated and timeless. "Will you marry me?" he asked. She blinked once, then twice. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You're not doing this because it's expected?" "No. I'm doing it because I never expected to feel like this with anyone. Because being with you changed everything. Because I want to build every part of my life with you. Not just businesses. A family. A future." She took the ring, slipped it on herself, and kissed him like her answer had been obvious all along. They married 2 months later in the brownstone garden, surrounded by only 20 people, friends, team members, and people who had believed in them when neither of them had yet figured out how to believe in themselves. Nia stood beside Sierra in soft blue, and Xavier's godfather officiated beneath the blooming archway of jasmine and lilies. They wrote their own vows, his steady and unwavering, hers fiery and clear. When Xavier said he would never ask her to stand behind him, only beside him, Sierra's eyes filled with tears. At the reception, he surprised her with a song she'd once said reminded her of the first time she'd ever dared to dream big. And when they danced, it wasn't rehearsed or choreographed. It was imperfect and wild and entirely theirs. Weeks later, they moved into the brownstone, renovated but still holding its warmth, and Haven Skin expanded into 3 new cities, with Sierra at the helm and Xavier quietly investing behind the scenes. They traveled when they wanted to, retreated when they needed space, and never once tried to turn their love into something it wasn't. On their 1-year anniversary, Sierra found a note tucked into her pillow. It wasn't poetic or grand, it simply read, "I would choose you again, 1,000 times, in every version of this life." She kept it in her wallet, and when people asked how they made it work, 2 strong minds, 2 relentless hearts, she always said the same thing. They didn't try to change each other. They just chose each other. Every single day.